Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So it's been a minute since I've been able to get back in front of the camera and cut another video. And it's not because I didn't want to, but all of us are not full-time YouTubers. So, when you got, a real job, you got family obligations, sometimes, you have to get in front of the mic, in front of the camera when you can. And unfortunately, it's been almost a week since I've been able to do another video. It's definitely not because of a lack of material. There's so much material that I could approach on this video channel that realistically, I could do this full time. I wish I could. That's really something that I would look forward to. But, things aren't working out that way just yet. But, the interest is still there. So I just want to, pick up where I left off, because this is a particular article that I've been wanting to comment on for a minute now. I don't know when it first came out, maybe about, maybe a month ago or so. The article that I'm going to respond to or really react to today is courtesy of an author who, I covered one of her pieces. It's probably been about a month and a half, 2 months ago. The last one of her articles I kind of reacted to was called Black Love: Why is the Relationship Commitment Less with Our Own and Greater with White Partners? And what the author of this article was basically saying is that she was looking at the breakup of, this Black Brazilian couple. It was both of the people involved in the relationship, in the marriage, one is she's relatively well known in terms of, she's a dancer who's appeared on a number of television programs. People know her in social media because of, her appearances on television. And then her husband is like a B-list actor who's been in, some television series and films. And so, when you see a prominent Black male with a prominent Black female in Brazil, there's always a cause for celebration, like, what they call amor afrocentrado, Black love, Afrocentric love, if you will. It's just a thing of more and more Black Brazilians are seeing the necessity of breaking with the shackles on the minds of Black Brazilians that says, hey, you should marry somebody white and produce lighter skinned children, within a couple of generations. Hopefully this Black stain, quote unquote, Black stain, will disappear from your family and you can move on and continue the process towards whiteness. So whenever there's a prominent Black couple, because you just don't see that many in Brazil, that's another thing. I've mentioned this before, and I recently saw an article where other people picked up on that. It's like there's like maybe a couple of prominent Black Brazilian couples, Black male, Black female. But whenever they want to celebrate Black love in Brazil, on social networks, they often will post one or two famous Black Brazilian couples, and then the rest of the couples that they feature will often be, Black American couples, because you just don't have that many examples of what you call, Black love featuring two Black partners. So when this particular marriage broke up, it was just kind of, a lot of people were disappointed, like what happened. A lot of people were throwing a lot of the blame at the husband in the marriage, like, how could you walk out on your wife? You already have a child together, and then she just gave birth to another child, and then you stepped. I'm still not really sure. Have to look a little bit deeper into this, but people they threw a lot of mud. They threw a lot of mud at him for him bailing on this marriage. So, I like the way she broke down this article. If you look back in my archives, you can find this video of this article that she did, a couple of months back. So let me see here. So the other piece that I'm going to be looking at today, are affections of Black Brazilian men colonized, or is there another reason for white preferences? So anybody who's checked out any of my videos on this YouTube space know that I've talked a lot about this, because a lot of Black women in Brazil believe that Black men have this preference for white women. And for years, as I was following, this is something that they call palmitagem, right? The predilection of specifically Black Brazilian males to have long-term relationships with white women. The accusation goes, okay, you'll have, kind of like a hookup with a Black girl, but if you want to have a serious relationship, get married, and have children, they always going to choose the white girl. And so for years, I've listened to that, and it seemed to be that way, right? Because you just don't get a lot of Black men being openly honest about why this is true, or if they even agree that it is true. What's driving this, right? Particularly among the, what we'll say, the prominent Black male profile. The actors, the singers, the rappers, men who are making a lot of money in Brazil, because it's a very small pool of Black men to choose from. And as long as I follow this, it seems to me, and it's not like I'm exaggerating. It's like when you find men in this category, it's like it seems like 90 to 95% of them are married to non-Black women. And even if in Brazil, there's a different standard for what's considered whiteness, right? A woman who many would consider white in Brazil could easily come to the United States and be considered just a Latina. Like, okay, we don't know what you are, but you're not quite white here. But the question is, what is leading this? And it's just different from what I've seen within the African-American community, where there's this ongoing war between African-American men and women, and Black American men a lot of them are checking out, saying, hey, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Whatever gripe they might have with Black American women, a lot of them are just choosing to open up their mating selections to say, hey, I can date this Asian girl, this white girl, this Hispanic girl. And in most cases, African-American men speak openly about what it is that they don't like about African-American women. And so, you've had this war of words going on for some time now. But I see differently in Brazil is that Black women have been calling it out since at least 2013, I would say 2012, maybe, where this question of palmitagem, or Black men preferring white women for long-term relationships, they pushed this question into the mainstream. There were articles, magazines that took on this issue. There were news programs who took on this issue. And for the most part, you just didn't get a lot of pushback. There was discussion among Afro-Brazilian men online, but you didn't really see them respond to the accusation in the same way that the Black women brought the issue on and made it a mainstream discussion. So I've always looked and said, I want to know more about this. Why? How come there's not enough men speaking on this, right? There have been some men who have spoken on it, but nowhere near to the degree that Afro-Brazilian women have brought the topic to the forefront. So there was something in this article that I really appreciated. There was something that was said here. And I said, I want to get around to this article and really highlight something that was said here. This may or may not be a key. It could be, maybe I'm digging a little bit too much into this, but in some ways I feel like I'm not. It was said, and I'm like, I really want to take a look at what this guy said. So anyway, are affections of Black Brazilian men colonized, or is there another reason for white preferences? Now, what we say by colonized, what they're saying is that their emotions, their, what can we say, affections, their attractions being shaped by European standards. That's what she's saying. Like, okay, have their minds been colonized by European standards, right? So, I'm just curious what else is going on here. And I'm not necessarily going to get the answer from this article, but there's a lot of comments about, I chose some other comments of what some things that Black men were saying in other areas on social networks. And I thought it fit perfectly with the question here. So for this first piece of this article, I'm probably going to split this into a 1 and part 2. I'm going to just focus on the article that this what is it, clinical psychologist, what she wrote. And then maybe in part two, I'm going to get into some responses, not necessarily directly to this article, but still on the same topic. So let's get into this, and maybe we'll find something that's really worth discussing, fleshing out a little bit more. This is a popular actor in Brazil. I think he's actually an African immigrant, but he's made it. I think his name is David. I think he calls himself David Jr. This is his significant other. He's been in Brazil for a number of years. He's been in a number of television programs, novellas, maybe a couple of films. So anyway, the title of the article that I want to react to today is called "What Does the Black Man Want?" It's taken from the original article in Portuguese, Que Quer o Homem Negro, from March 16, 2023. Okay, so it's about almost 2 weeks ago. And the article is written by Shania Carlson. So this is my translation of the piece. And I'm going to get into, my reaction to what she said. And then I'm going to dig into some other comments that don't directly talk about what she's saying, but it goes into, it addresses some questions that I don't think that she properly addressed in this article. So let's just get into this. The famous frontal question that Frantz Fanon asks in his work, Black Skin, White Masks, remains a question worth millions, although the author provides consistent elements to rethink our Blackness. In recent years, we have received a huge wave of Afrocentric productions within the reach of many of us. That is, knowledge is there circulating, although difficulties persist, mainly with regard to our affective relationships. So the famous book by Frantz Fanon, in English, Black Skin, White Mask, I think it originally came out in 1952. It's a book that I read a long time ago. But, when you look at the situation in Brazil and other places where Black people are ruled by non-Black people, this is a book that is still relevant today. 70 years later? Well, or is it? Yeah, about 71 years later. So this is the Portuguese edition of the book. So Pele Negra, Máscaras Brancas by Frantz Fanon. So what does the Black man want? I must confess that I spend the day looking and listening to incredible Black women with all the love in the world. However, with extreme regret, with that sadness experienced in the collective. So I activate Vilma Piedade's book, Sororidade, to account for the material and symbolic injustices directed at us. Okay, so this book, Sororidade, and it comes out of the word sororidade, which means sorority. So this book by Vilma Piedade, all right, let me try to find a definition of this here. This is from another article here. She says that Sororidade, which it's a mixture of dor, which means pain, with sorority. So, this is sorority between women and mixed with the word dor, which means, pain. So she's saying it's the pain that transforms itself into power. That's one of the definitions. Then more, let me see here. Okay, so it says here, Sororidade is the empathy of Black women connected by common pain. So that's where the word Sororidade comes from that she's speaking about here in the book that she's talking about. I cannot deny that my place as a technician and health professional requires maximum neutrality. However, as a Black woman, I am also crossed by this social, historical, cultural. And it's okay. Otherwise, I would not have the minimum conditions to guarantee a quality service to my audience. This article aims to insist on the urgent need for Black men to decolonize their affections, assume affective responsibility, and rethink their active contribution to the psychological and emotional suffering of Black women. I recognize that I speak of a punctual place, but it is normal to hear daily stories of Black women who are constantly hidden, made invisible, reduced to an early morning snack, and treated like any other object. Who's lying? The account does not close. it's not just a story, they are systematic and recurrent reports. Some even assume the public sphere, exposing the inconsistency of Black men when transforming their discourses into responsible practices. Now, another intriguing, we'll say, occurrence. This was, I think, maybe last week or the week before, where a popular Black Brazilian male public figure, you could say very influential. He's very influential on Instagram. You know, I've actually featured a couple of his articles, you know, translated a few of his articles on the blog, and also this video channel. But a lot of Black women have complained over the years about how Black Brazilian men will have this kind of, they'll treat them in a certain way where they'll have relationships at night. They don't want to officially pronounce this thing they have going as a monogamous relationship. So, you know, there were other stories that I've posted on this video channel that talk about how Black women say, look, you know, while we were kicking it, we'll say, you didn't want to have a full-term relationship. You didn't want to proclaim me as your official girlfriend. The relationship ends, and then, you know, shortly afterward, he's seen walking the streets holding hands with a white girl. So this is a story that I've just read these comments from Black women over the years. These, you know, just hundreds, if not thousands of stories where they feel they had that same exact experience. Like, you know, just 2 days ago, you say you didn't want to be in a relationship. You break up with me. Now you're in a relationship with a white girl. So, you know, what's up with that? So this prominent social media figure, Black Brazilian male, it was exposed maybe a couple of weeks ago by the girl that he had some type of relationship with. And she put it out on Twitter saying like, hey, look, he did this to me. You know, we were in a relationship for 3 years, but he never, you know, went public with that relationship. So this is what she's talking about here. Black women who are consistent or constantly hidden, made invisible, and reduced to early morning snacks. This is a photo of the popular actor and singer Seu Jorge with his girlfriend. I guess it was announced recently that he was having his fourth child with her. And it's not just me who noticed this. I was talking to, again, one of my contacts in Brazil, and he said, man, I've never seen Seu Jorge with a Black woman. And, you know, there's pictures all over the internet of the various relationships he's been in. And you just have to ask the question, like, okay, in all of these years that you've been, you know, you've been with various women, it's just, how is it that you never, you know, and it's maybe it's not for me to ask, but it's just something that, you know, a lot of people notice, you know. So this is, I guess, his latest girlfriend. I don't know if he's married her or yet, but, you know, there's pictures of her pregnant. I'm quite sure she's probably already had the child by now, but Seu Jorge is one of the most popular. He's popular in music as well as in appearing in films and television series, but never seen him with a Black woman. Anyway, certainly the decolonization of affections is a collective task, but we must take into account the existence of a greater difficulty on the part of Black men in the face of this task. Women have moved forward. It's visible, whether due to machismo or patriarchal heritage. Black men seem to be more affected when it comes to deepening relationships with Black women and delivering proper values to them. Once, a long time ago, I heard an Afro-Colombian man living in Brazil. I heard from an Afro-Colombian man living in Brazil the following statement. So get this. This is a Black Colombian man who's been living in Brazil. She didn't say how long he'd been there, but this is what he said to her. Quote, Black women don't accept a concrete fact that they prefer Black men and get with white men because of a lack of option. Black men like white women and Black women. And in fact, we prefer white women because they are less problematic. They are more functional, and that's why you are jealous of white women, unquote. A lot that he said in there. Now, mind you, I've said this for years that in general, you don't hear a lot of Black Brazilian men speak on this apparent preference for white women, right? But here you have an Afro-Colombian man who's living in Brazil. So obviously he, you know, being consumed in Brazilian culture and knowing people, meeting people, just being in Brazil, obviously he knows about, some of the things that men talk about in Brazil, because he's living there. He may be Colombian, but he's living in Brazil now. And this is what he's saying. Listen to what he said. He says that Black men like white women and Black women. And in fact, we prefer white women because they are less problematic. They are more functional. And that's why you are jealous of white women. So when I saw that, I'm like, what does he mean by that? He says, white women they are less problematic. What does that mean? Does that mean that, I don't know, personalities or aggressiveness? Is he speaking on a certain aspect of Black Brazilian women's personalities? There's, obviously this is a discussion that we're having, in the Black YouTube platform, in terms of United States, what Black men are saying. But as I've said, over the years, you don't get many Black Brazilian men speaking on what appears to be a preference for white women. But here you have an Afro-Colombian man living in Brazil making this statement to an Afro-Brazilian female clinical psychologist, right? So I'm just wondering, what is she thinking about this when he says this? Another thing that strikes me about this, and I've talked to a number of people who have hit me to this over the years, as well as the comments that I've read over the years. He says here, what is it? He's saying here that Black women in Brazil prefer Black men, and they end up getting with white men because of a lack of options. So what that means, what he's saying here is that he believes Black Brazilian women do prefer Black Brazilian men, but as they get passed over by Black Brazilian men for white women, they end up getting with the white men who want to get into a relationship with them. But I've heard a number of people tell me, like, Mark, that's definitely not true. Black women in Brazil also want white partners. And this, if there's an old article that I did, I don't know how many years ago that was, but basically I was asking the question, why is it that it seems that Black Brazilian women have raised this issue of Black men having this preference? But then when you look in celebrity circles, a lot of famous, well-known Black Brazilian women are also with white men. So how is it that you're pointing the finger at these Black men when it seems that Black women are doing the same thing, right? And a number of people have pointed this out. Some of my contacts in Brazil tell me, like, no, that's not necessarily true. This preference for whiteness affects both Black Brazilian men and women. So Black women are airing this out as if they don't do this, right? So let me just keep going here. So that was what the Afro-Colombian man said. So the writer of this article says, it was a painful line to hear, but it seemed like the real unraveling of what most Black men think about us and hide. For the first time in my life, I stood before an honest Black man, and somehow I thanked him. It was pedagogical. It was like he taught her something, right? Here's another picture of a popular Afro-Brazilian actor. This is the actor Jean Paulo Campos with his girlfriend, Luana Chaves. This guy started off as a child actor. Everybody remembers him when he was like 8 years old, and he appeared on this, it's like a children's novella. It was called Carrossel. And the relationship he had on that program, the character that he played was called Cirilo, rather. And through that whole show, he was just shown fawning over this little white girl. And this little white girl just, realistically, I mean, she stepped all over him. And somebody wrote a text some years ago just talking about how it seems that there's a lot of Black men who have the same syndrome, like anything for the affection of a white girl. You go through torture, humiliation, and whatever. And so here it is. I think he may be in his late teens, early 20s by now. And, this is his girlfriend. So just, as I've said, when you look through the entertainment circle of Afro-Brazilian males, it's rare that you're going to see one with a Black girl on his elbow. Continuing. The construction of Black subjectivity is an extremely diffuse path and full of dysfunctionalities, since as the Black subject is shaped, he introjects the logic of his oppressor, assuming values dissonant with his reality as a subject and Black. The result is a psychic reality in which the unconscious is degraded by the devastation that racism causes. I once heard from a Black psychoanalyst who I have as a reference that despite our efforts, our unconscious is very white because that is what the West produces. So in essence, what she's saying here is that, you know, our subconscious is still very much white because we've been indoctrinated with this superiority of whiteness. No matter where you look, and in Brazil, it's almost worse than what you find in the United States because, you know, Black Americans have managed to carve out our own niche, our own community, our own standards to some degree, whereas it's only been in recent years that Black Brazilians have begun to mount this, you know, this challenge to this colonial imprint of white superiority. So basically, this is what they're saying. These are our references. These are the references that Black Brazilians have. And it's only been, you know, in recent years that the general population is starting to question this adoration of whiteness. This comment seems to be in line with Frantz Fanon when he says that, quote, as painful as this realization may be for us, we are obliged to do it. For the Black man, there is only one way, and it is white, unquote. All these factors affect something that is fundamental to the survival of every subject: desire. The subject of psychoanalysis is the one who desires that which makes life happen. The subject transits, moves. What happens in the process of constructing the subject who has his desire displaced? After all, what does the Black man really want? Another book that she's going to mention here. I'm not even going to try to, I'll try to pronounce this name. The author Oyeronke Eyewumi, in the book, translated, or I guess they have it in a Portuguese edition, A Invenção das Mulheres Construindo Sentido Africano para os Discursos Ocidentais de Gênero, which can be translated as The Invention of Women, Making an African Sense of Western Gender Discourses. It highlights this shift of the desire of the Black man as one of the results of the colonization of Black minds and bodies. The author says, quote, the look that the natives direct towards the settler city is a look of lust, a look of envy. It expresses his dream of possession, to sit at the settler's table, to sleep in the settler's bed with his wife, if possible, unquote. Now, there's been plenty of books written over the years, you know, not only from the United States, but, you know, books in Brazil and also in Africa where this applies, where the mind of African descendants has been so programmed. It's like we have been taught to desire everything that the white master wants. So that's in essence what's going on right here. You know, who was it? Eldridge Cleaver wrote this in his Soul on Ice book. Just like he wanted to grasp freedom, he needed to grasp the body of a white woman. Time has passed, and what has changed? Very little. The introduction of this white feminine ideal causes Black men, even in relationships with Black men, let me say this again. The introduction of this white feminine ideal causes Black men, even in relationships with Black women, to reproduce in some measure the dehumanization, objectification, and denial of the status of femininity to us Black women. That's something else that I've pointed out previously where, you know, statistics say that most Brazilian couples are where the male and the female are both of the same race. And people who have looked at that statistic says, well, you can't really complain about this idea that Black people prefer white people when the majority of Black and brown people are married to Black and brown people. But my response to that has always been, just because they're married together doesn't mean that the Black partner, either one or both of them, don't have a secret desire to have a white partner by their sides, and they just didn't manage to do it. So that's something else that I totally, I can co-sign on that statement that was just made, because when I look at the statistics, that's something that comes to my mind. Oftentimes, you see cases, and I've heard just hundreds of cases where there's a Black Brazilian man married to a Black Brazilian woman, they have children, and then sometime, some years later, they abandon the family and then they pop up somewhere else married to a white woman. So this kind of it almost kind of just like affirms, what my belief is. That's not to say that all Black couples aren't together because they love each other. I'm just saying we can't dismiss the idea that simply because two Black people are married, that one or both of those partners don't have a desire to get that trophy white spouse. It's been talked about very much so in Brazil's social media, as well as in academia. It is a social value constantly subtracted as if it were an unusual place to be occupied, and the subliminal message is, my desire is not in you. You are not worth the effective investment. And I say here effective with an A, as in emotional or in terms of relationship. And here it is crucial to differentiate between desire and objectification. Another key point here, desire and objectification, because a lot of Black women will say, Black men want to sleep with me, have, a nighttime relationship with me, a hookup, or what they call in Brazil, a ficar, but they don't want to assume a long-term relationship. So the differentiation between desire and objectification. The result is Black men interacting with Black women in a superficial, utilitarian, disrespectful, and animalizing way, disregarding the pain and illness it causes to Black women. So this is what a lot of Black women have said over the years, like, you use me for the night or carry on this, this situationship for a while until that trophy white girl comes along that you're looking for. So this is the accusation. Here's the book, Plantation Memories, Episodes of Everyday Racism. What is it? Grada Quilomba. Again, we are faced with a harsh reality, being thrown into that commonplace by those we expect the least bit of humanity from. The author Grada Quilomba, in her book, Memories of the Plantation, Episodes of Everyday Racism, says that Black women are missing persons. Those who, quote, those who have little or no power are thus categorized not only because they have nothing, but because they are nothing, unquote. So it is not surprising that beautiful, intelligent, powerful, successful, loving, and available Black women who are willing to have a healthy relationship find themselves single or banging their heads around. All these qualities are often grounds for retaliation, for punishment. Sounds like a message. How dare you be a woman and full? Without realizing it, or even intentionally, the Black man tends to repeat oppressive logics that are macho and permeated by colonial thought. Another book here, Por que amamos? Why do we love? What does the Black woman want? May the subordinate wish? The author Renato Nogueira, in his work, Por que amamos, meaning why we love, when highlighting the Gaura philosophy in the book O Espírito da Intimidade, meaning the spirit of intimacy, by the author Sobonfu Somé, highlights intimacy as a fundamental path for the health of relationships and the experience of love. Okay, cover that book here. Intimacy requires reciprocity, respect for the other, and especially openness to an effective surrender. The superficiality and multiple violence that Black men impose on Black women, either by questionable attitudes or by subtraction of possibilities, is totally contrary to the proposal of propositional experiences, both individual and collective. When one of us denounces the neglect and incongruity of a Black man, we collectively relive a whole history of pain and invisibility. This is sad. Is it possible that one day the Black woman will be in the desire of the Black man? Really? I hope so. So anyway, again, this piece was written by Shania Carlson. She's a clinical psychologist, a diversity specialist, writer, columnist, diversity and inclusion consultant, and director at the Instituto da Mulher Negra do Portugal. Okay. So what I want to point out here is something that, again, what the Afro-Colombian man living in Brazil said to her, because I feel like this guy dropped this little nugget on her. And instead of looking deeper into that, it's almost like she went right back to what has been said all along about why Black men seem to have these situationships with black women and then just dump them and move on to a white girl for a more long lasting relationship. I really can't stress this point enough. I mean, listen to what he said. Again, he says, we prefer white women because they are less problematic. They are more functional. And that's why you are jealous of white women. There's a lot to be said there, because the response of Black Brazilian women has always been that black men don't want us because they have a preference for white women. Their minds have been colonized by this, this European standard of beauty, this trophy wife syndrome, anything for the white woman syndrome. And okay, on the outside, I always wanted, okay, maybe that's true. But I always wanted to say, okay, is it possible there's something else that's going on here? We can't just take one side and just take what they're saying is just, that's the absolute fact without hearing what the other side is saying. So that's key what this man said. It took a black man living in a black Colombian man living in Brazil to say something this open, something so honest about why it is that a lot of black men do seem to prefer white women in Brazil. But again, I don't think this is everything that's going on here. So I'm going to end this particular part of this video here and invite you to come back to part 2, because part 2, I'm going to feature some comments by a lot of Black Brazilian men in terms of this topic and what they're saying, because like I said, the conversation has been dominated by Black Brazilian women up until this point. And I've always wanted to hear more about, a lot of my readers are asking a question, okay, Black Brazilian women are saying this, but what are the men saying? So I'm going to get a little bit more into that in the next video, which is going to be a part 2 continuation here. Again, what does the black man want? That's the title of the article that I translated and put here that I reacted to, but I'm titling the video itself, Are affections of Black Brazilian men colonized? Or is there another reason for these so-called white preferences? So here, I'm going to end this video here and invite you to come back to part 2, where I'm going to dig a little bit more into, well, what are some of these men saying? So definitely, if you like this video, definitely give me a thumbs up, give me a like. Definitely consider subscribing to the channel, share this video, post your comments, get the conversation going. Click that notification bell so you'll know when my other videos pop up, particularly, as I said, there's going to be a part 2 to this article. And until then, until that second video is ready, I'll invite you to come out, keep your eye on the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.